Zones provide input control for outputs. Each zone has a primary input source and a priority source. The priority source can be set to automatically override the primary source based on signal detection for important announcements or emergencies. Zones support stereo channels, volume level, and mute. The Source tab is used to select the input channel feeding the zone as the primary input. A priority input channel can also be specified as an alternate for such events as announcements. The main input source can be selected from the primary input drop-down menu. The channels listed in this box are filtered by zone restriction settings made in the Restrictions tab. Stereo channels are indicated as such. Primary sources are filtered by the selections made in the Zone Restrictions tab. The priority input selection defines an alternate input source used to interrupt the current signal when announcements or emergency signals need to be made. There are two modes for signal detection. Priority mode is used to interrupt the primary source signal when a minimum threshold level is detected on the priority input. By default, only the threshold needs to be defined. In manual mode, basic compressor settings are provided for detecting the signal within a specified time frame. Attack is the time at which the signal must exceed the threshold for the priority signal to override. Release is the amount of time after the signal falls below the threshold that the amp switches back to the primary input. Hold is the amount of time that the signal must fall outside of the threshold for the attack or release to be triggered. Override volume is used to specify a different volume level for the priority input than the zone volume level for the priority input. Ducking differs from priority mode in that primary signal is removed completely but can be reduced in level so the priority input can be heard. The usual compressor settings are available for signal detection. A depth control is added to attenuate the primary source signal when the priority signal is mixed in. The zone volume controls are used to configure the range and external control of the zone volume. Volume range can be set to minimum and maximum values. Doing so will prevent the gain control from being adjusted beyond these limits. Allow mute control can be used to prevent the mute button from operating. Volume control on GPIO allows users to set the GPIO pin to be used for controlling volume. Individual pins must be enabled prior to use. The GPIO settings may be further configured on the Settings tab. Zone restrictions allow users to configure inputs that can be selected as a primary source. Inputs are presented in a grid where green check marks indicate that the input source is allowed to be selected as a primary input to the current zone. A red X mark indicates that the input is not selectable as an input source. Only those with a green check mark will appear in the primary source input selection on the Zone Source tab. A red P symbol indicates that the input is already selected as the primary source. It cannot be deselected. Stereo inputs are indicated with range lines to show the checkmark controls two input channels. Each zone control has a compressor that can be enabled or disabled. Default settings include threshold control. Attack is the time the signal must exceed the threshold for the compressor to engage. Release is the time that the signal must fall below the threshold for the compressor to disengage. Hold is the amount of time the attack or release time must be detected before they take effect. The ratio is used to determine the amount of volume reduction the compressor will apply above the threshold. For example, a ratio of 3 indicates that for every 3 decibel rise in signal volume at the compressor input, the signal will only rise 1 decibel in level. The knee value is used to smooth out the transition between the compression and non-compression across the threshold. The transition can be improved by increasing the knee. The compressor will begin to apply compression gradually as it approaches the threshold. Based on where the knee is set, the compressor will begin to apply compression gradually as it approaches the threshold.